How long does it take you to write Inglourious Bastards?
I came up with it, actually, the idea a long time ago and the characters, but this last time when I wrote it and finished it, I actually wrote it in about 6 months.
At 62, Quentin Tarantino has built more than a career. He's carved out a myth. A director who doesn't just make movies, he makes rules. His sets are kingdoms, his dialogue is scripture, and his casting choices are the laws of gravity. If you fit his rhythm, you're immortalized. If you don't, you vanish. No second chances, no nostalgic reunions, no polite industry handshakes. Tarantino's genius burns hot, and when it burns out on you, it doesn't fade quietly, it explodes. And in that explosion, 6 actors found themselves permanently locked outside his cinematic world. Quentin Tarantino's reputation is not just about talent, it's about total alignment. With him, loyalty is currency, and disloyalty is a death sentence. He has an almost cult-like bond with the actors he favors: Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson, Christoph Waltz. They become extensions of his cinematic vision, carrying his sharp-edged dialogue like sacred verse. But when that bond cracks, he doesn't just move on. He cuts deep. He severs ties so completely that even the echo of collaboration disappears. These aren't minor disagreements or creative differences tucked away in Hollywood gossip columns. With Quentin, a falling out becomes legend. He isn't the type to let the bitterness dissolve with time. He turns it into silence so sharp it feels louder than an argument. Behind the camera, he's obsessive, protective, and unwilling to compromise. His energy thrives on intensity and focus, which means the moment an actor disrupts that, they've already lost. What makes Tarantino fascinating is how personal these clashes feel. It's not about box office numbers or awards. It's about trust. Break it, and you don't just lose a role, you lose your place in his universe. And that exile in Tarantino's world is permanent. Lawrence Tierney was the first real casualty. On paper, casting him in Reservoir Dogs was a stroke of genius. He had the kind of stone-cold presence from the noir era that could instantly legitimize Tarantino's debut film. As Joe Cabot, the veteran gangster leading a crew of jewel thieves, he was supposed to bring gravitas and menace. Instead, he brought chaos. Tierney clashed with Tarantino at every turn, forgetting lines, questioning direction, exploding into fits of anger on set. What should have been an anchor role turned into a daily gamble. The young cast, Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, Harvey Keitel, felt the tension shift whenever Tierney walked in. The entire set became unstable. One infamous blow-up ended with Tarantino firing him on the spot. Later, Quentin compared dealing with Tierney to wrangling a senile uncle off his meds, a remark that wasn't exaggerated according to others on set. For Tarantino, who was only 29 at the time, trying to establish control over his first feature, this was unforgivable. He'd built the role for Tierney, and yet by the time filming wrapped, their professional relationship was dead. No cameos, no nods in later films, no affectionate stories shared in interviews. Tarantino buried Tierney from his filmography like a bad take left on the cutting room floor. Even as Reservoir Dogs became a cult classic, Tierney's name was erased from Quentin's narrative. That silence said more than any rant could. Bruce Willis should have been different. When Pulp Fiction exploded, it turned washed-up careers into resurrections. Willis, struggling through box office bombs like Hudson Hawk and Color of Night, suddenly had a shot at redemption. As Butch, the aging boxer who refuses to throw a fight, he delivered one of the film's most iconic arcs. But behind the camera, sparks didn't fly. Willis came from a world where his charisma carried films, where improvisation and star swagger were the norm. Tarantino, on the other hand, demands absolute fidelity to his words. Every pause, every stutter, every curse is deliberate. When Willis drifted from the script, Quentin didn't see creativity. He saw defiance. Crew members whispered about the chill between them. Quentin irritated by Bruce's attitude, Bruce unimpressed by Quentin's control. The result was a silent stalemate. While John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson became Tarantino's eternal allies, Willis faded out of his circle. No roles in Kill Bill, no cameos in later projects. Even in interviews, Quentin rarely mentions him, skating around Bruce's name like it doesn't exist. And Willis, ever the professional, never badmouthed Tarantino, but he also never celebrated Pulp Fiction as his grand revival. The absence speaks louder than words. In Quentin's orbit, Willis was a star who shined too brightly on his own, when what Quentin really wanted was someone to orbit him. George Clooney seemed like he might click with Tarantino. Their collaboration on From Dusk Till Dawn launched Clooney from TV star into big-screen danger man and gave Quentin a chance to act and flex his writing chops in a blood-soaked vampire western. The film is now a cult classic, but their relationship didn't survive it. Years later, Quentin dismissed Clooney with a brutal simplicity. George Clooney is not a movie star. No sarcasm, no humor, just dismissal. For Clooney, who had gone on to lead the Ocean's franchise, win Oscars, and direct prestige dramas, it was a jab that cut deep. He pushed back, pointing to his critically acclaimed work, but it didn't matter. Quentin wasn't grading filmographies. He was grading authenticity. To him, Clooney embodied everything polished and safe about Hollywood. Slick, charming, but not raw. Tarantino's world thrives on grit, unpredictability, and danger. Clooney, in Quentin's eyes, was all red carpets and toothpaste commercials. The collaboration died then and there. Clooney never reappeared in a Tarantino film, never got another script, never even received a cameo. For Quentin, once the illusion broke, there was no going back. Clooney may have soared to Hollywood royalty, but in Tarantino's world, he was erased, not with drama, but with silence. If Clooney's erasure was quiet, Spike Lee's was a full-blown war. Their feud spilled out into headlines, interviews, and endless debates about race, storytelling, and ownership. Spike, never shy with his critiques, went after Tarantino's heavy use of the N-word in films like Jackie Brown and Django Unchained. He accused Quentin of fetishizing the term, asking if he was trying to be an honorary black man. Quentin didn't back down. He snapped back with venom, saying Spike had no right to dictate what other artists could say, even telling him outright to shut the F*** up. That kind of line isn't a debate, it's a declaration of war. The feud deepened when Spike outright condemned Django Unchained as disrespectful to Black history, refusing to even watch it. Tarantino's response? Dismissing Spike entirely, claiming he was just bitter because Quentin was making the black movies he wished he could make. There was no coming back from that. Unlike Willis or Clooney, this wasn't about subtle silence. It was about a loud public serving. The two men continued to dominate cinema in their own ways, but their circles never intersect. No panels, no joint projects, no public reconciliations, just a cold, final distance carved out in front of the world. Steve Buscemi's case is strange. As Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs, he gave Tarantino one of his most iconic opening rants, the infamous "I don't tip waitresses" speech. That scene became legendary, but behind the fiction, there were rumors that the line reflected Buscemi's own real-life comments. Crew members whispered that Quentin took offense to Buscemi echoing the sentiment off-camera, and while it never erupted into a fight, it may have quietly poisoned their working relationship. Unlike Madsen, Roth, or Keitel, actors Quentin would return to again and again, Buscemi disappeared from his universe after Reservoir Dogs. No small role in Pulp Fiction, no part in Kill Bill, no second shot. Fans speculated about the absence for years, and Quentin once half-joked that if Buscemi wanted back in, he'd have to play a waiter. The punchline carried weight, because the door was clearly closed. Buscemi himself has been gracious, saying only that he hasn't heard from Quentin in a long time and wishing him well, but the silence is unmistakable. For a director who thrives on loyalty and repetition, leaving Buscemi out of his cinematic family wasn't an accident, it was a decision. And in Tarantino's world, once you're out, you don't get written back in. Warren Beatty's story with Tarantino is almost Shakespearean in how close it came to rewriting film history. Imagine it. Kill Bill with Beatty as Bill himself, the poetic, menacing, larger-than-life villain who haunted every frame. Tarantino didn't just casually consider Beatty. He built the character around him. The cadence, the mystique, the layered sense of tragedy, it all aligned with Beatty's screen presence. But the collaboration never survived the rehearsal stage. Beatty wasn't just an actor. He was a filmmaker with a towering reputation for control. He had directed, produced, and written films that defined entire eras of Hollywood. So when he sat across from Tarantino, he didn't simply want to act, he wanted to collaborate. He had notes, suggestions, and tonal ideas. Maybe he thought his experience entitled him to shape the role. But Quentin wasn't seeking a partner. He wasn't sharing authorship. For him, Kill Bill was a pure revenge opera, a cinematic symphony that lived and died entirely in his head. When Beatty pressed too far, Tarantino cut him loose. No screaming matches, no headlines, just a quiet but absolute break. David Carradine was cast instead, and his performance became iconic, but always with that ghost of what might have been. Later, when asked about Beatty's departure, Quentin gave a line that said everything. It wasn't going to work. I needed someone who understood it wasn't their story. In those words, the entire philosophy of his career was exposed. For Tarantino, every frame belongs to him. Every gesture is his creation. Actors are instruments, not co-writers. Beatty, with all his Hollywood stature, violated that rule. And in Tarantino's world, that violation is fatal. The two men never worked together again, never even brushed against each other in interviews or panels. Beatty never publicly complained, but the silence was mutual. For most directors, the chance to work with someone of Beatty's magnitude would have been irresistible. For Tarantino, it was expendable. Kill Bill wasn't Beatty's story, and so Beatty was erased from it. That's how Tarantino operates, not with grudges that fester in tabloids, but with a finality that leaves no room for return. When you cross his boundary, you don't just lose a role, you vanish from his universe entirely. Patterns like these reveal something bigger than one actor or one argument. They show how Tarantino builds loyalty and punishes dissonance with the same intensity that he builds his movies. The people who stay in his orbit, Uma Thurman, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, Samuel L. Jackson, aren't just good actors. They're soldiers, willing to fall in line with his rhythm and his vision. They understand that when Quentin says every word matters, it's not hyperbole, it's the law, and they obey it. That obedience earns them immortality. Jackson's voice is now synonymous with Tarantino's style. Waltz became a star because Quentin gave him the stage. Thurman's face is etched into cinematic history through Quentin's lens. But for every one of them, there are the exiles, people like Willis, Clooney, Buscemi, Beatty, actors who didn't fully submit, who didn't bend to his authorship, and so they were cut away. Tarantino doesn't hold on to the past with nostalgia. He doesn't bring people back decades later for sentimental reunions. Once you're gone, you're gone. His silence is absolute. In an industry that thrives on reconciliation, where grudges are often temporary and second chances are currency, Tarantino is a relic. He doesn't give second chances. He edits people out of his history with the same precision he edits scenes out of his films. That's why his grudges feel so monumental. They don't fade. They calcify. They become part of the mythology of Tarantino himself. And when you scan the names missing from his filmography, you can see just how sharp that blade really is. At its core, this isn't about personality clashes. It's about control. Tarantino is not a director who negotiates. His sets aren't collaborative playgrounds. They're battlegrounds for his vision. He doesn't tolerate improvisation unless he wrote it, doesn't want actors overshadowing the script with charisma, and doesn't leave room for alternative ideas. This level of rigidity is what has given us some of the most tightly crafted films in modern history, but it's also what leaves bodies on the cutting room floor. Actors who aren't aligned with his rhythm simply cannot survive in his universe. That's why even legends can be dismissed. Talent is not enough. Awards are not enough. Fame is irrelevant. In Quentin's world, the only thing that matters is absolute submission to the vision. You play the role his way, or you don't play it at all. And that's why even collaborations that seemed inevitable, like with Beatty or Clooney, died before they had a chance to bloom. Tarantino's genius is singular, and so is his intolerance. When you finally look at the list, Tierney, Willis, Clooney, Lee, Buscemi, Beatty, it becomes clear that this is not about hate in the childish sense. Tarantino doesn't hate actors the way fans might imagine. He erases them. He strips them from his mythology as if they were never there. In his cinematic universe, silence is punishment and absence is exile. For those who remain, his loyal circle, the reward is immortality, etched forever in dialogue, in blood, in film reels that will outlast them all. But for those who crossed him, the silence will last just as long. In Tarantino's world, that is the final cut. Quentin Tarantino at 62 is more than just a filmmaker. He's a myth maker, a storyteller who builds entire worlds and decides who gets to live in them. His universe is stitched together not only by dialogue and violence, but by loyalty and trust. The actors who earn his faith are rewarded with immortality, faces and voices that define his filmography forever. But those who slip out of sync, who question the rhythm or push against his control, are cut away with a finality that leaves no room for return. To Tarantino, silence is sharper than any insult. Absence is the ultimate punishment. Look at the 6 names: Tierney, Willis, Clooney, Lee, Buscemi, Beatty. Each one a talent, each one a legend in their own right. Yet in Quentin's world, they became ghosts, edited out of the narrative as if they were never part of it. No tributes, no reunions, no nostalgic callbacks, just silence. For Tarantino, art is not a democracy, it's an empire, and he is its sole ruler. That empire has given us some of the greatest films in modern cinema, but it has also left behind a trail of broken bridges and actors who never returned. And maybe that's the price of genius. You can admire it, you can criticize it, but you can't ignore it. Quentin Tarantino doesn't just direct films, he directs destinies. Some actors become legends within his universe. Others are erased from it forever. The only question left is, whose name will be missing from the next chapter?